And we got folks joining. Welcome, everyone, to Art Viewing Adventures. We're going to officially start in a couple minutes, but we always have a little chat before we get going.
Yeah.
And I am joined by my friend Charles, aka Chuck Berry, who you and I have known each other for decades.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Probably 20 years, I'm guessing.
Yeah, maybe even a little more. And we know
Yeah.
each other as bicyclists, but I, of course, know that you had a career as a photographer, but you and I haven't talked a lot about your photography,
No, not really.
although we have had some nice, enjoyable visits to SF MoMA.
Oh, yeah. And of course, Oracle Park, or is that still called Oracle Park? Or they changed the name again?
I want them to call it Rodney Park, but apparently I have to pony up like a few $100 million to make that
Yeah,
happen.
probably. Yeah, I still call it Pac Bell Park, but that's me.
Yeah, it's funny. We just met the guy who was he was the marketing guy for the Giants back in like the 80s and 90s when they were trying to put that deal together.
Wow.
He said that it was actually going to be called Old Navy Park because they were going to get money from the Gap for that.
That's kind of a cool name.
Yeah, the problem is they just started the brand and they weren't sure if it was going to be a big success or not.
Yeah.
So they backed off.
That's funny.
So we are getting started. I thought I'd ask you, so Chuck, you told me you just visited the Ansel Adams exhibition, it's at the DeYoung, is that right?
Right. Yeah, it was just a members preview last weekend. I think we went on Friday. Yeah, it was Friday.
And what did you think?
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I Ansel Adams being one of the bigger names in photography for a long time, certainly when I was coming up, I read a lot about him. I read a couple of his books and was familiar with a lot of his different work, but it was a neat exhibit to see because it wasn't just his typical Yosemite rock face stuff. They showed a lot of his more esoteric things and the fact that he actually had done some commercial photography for a while. They didn't show too much of that. But no, it was pretty neat. It was a lot of the stuff that they showed were like little detailed pictures while he goes somewhere and he's waiting for the fog to clear up or something like that so he can get one of these majestic granite pictures with a beautiful sky and everything. He gets pictures of just stuff that's lying around on the ground, and which is kind of what I do. It's kind of like a hunter-gatherer photography thing. And we modern people think that we invented it, but no, he was doing it back in like the 30s. Just these things, just plays of light and shadow on ordinary objects and trash and stuff. So it was eye-opening to see that he was doing that. Most of the rest of it I'd seen mostly before and learned about before, but they actually juxtapose it with some modern photographers also, show what they're doing in more modern times. A lot of these people who were born like in the 70s and 80s and 90s, what they're doing along similar themes, which was very cool. It was a lot more crowded than I thought it was going to be for a members preview. I was like, it was a lot of people were gathered around one picture, so you have to like move over to like another picture, not necessarily the next one you wanted to see, but then the only one that nobody's gathered around. So then you have to wait till the crowd leaves the one picture you want to see so you can go back to it. It's kind of the way museums post-COVID are for me these days.
Yeah, I mean, my trick is to go. I like going like, I guess they're closed on Tuesdays, but like pick a day of the week that they don't get a lot of traffic.
Yeah,
I definitely want to check that out, and I think we're gonna on this show maybe do a program about that. We like to do those things.
That's great.
Thanks for telling us about that, Chuck. So I'm Rodney Paul. This is Art Viewing Adventures. We'll go ahead and dive in. And I don't think we have our connector from the Community Living Campaign. So if I'm correct about that, I can just go in and say that we are a nonprofit that serves people with disabilities and older people, providing them with ways of getting content that you can do from your home, which is kind of nice. And we do a lot of other programs in addition to mine. There's actually an art class that is usually on Mondays, and there's going to be rock history, and this is not geology. This is rock and roll history with my good friend tonight at 6 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. Richie Unterberger. I am not remembering what his program's on. If anyone knows out there and you want to throw that in the chat, let us know. But Chuck, let me go ahead and get these slides going for you. So this is again my friend Chuck Berry, Charles Berry. Stuff is all around you. This is something Chuck said to me while we were talking about this photography, and I was like, that's kind of cool. You have been a photographer for like 40 years for Santa Clara University.
Yeah, almost not quite 40 years for them, but probably more than 30 for them. And then I did a lot of other stuff. I started out doing some newspaper work. I was a journalism major at SF State and tried to get into being a photojournalist. And then oddly, from one of the newspapers I was working for, they recommended me to a university. So I started doing university stuff. And then when the job opened up at Santa Clara, I just was qualified.
Yeah, and so you've spent a lot of time behind the camera, but you were showing. I've seen a lot of your photography on Facebook, and I've always really enjoyed it. And I thought we should talk about this stuff and just like have a nice conversation about kind of where it takes me, what my curiosity is about what you've done, and your thoughts on what's your practice, how do you work. And we will start with this photograph. And I'll first say that it's like a really intriguing image to me. I love the way the light, the lamp is framed by these palm trees, and I love the color of the sky in the background. If the folks out there in the audience want to throw some thoughts about this in the chat, we'd love to see that.
Please.
I just find this like it makes me wonder, like, where is this place? Looks like some kind of like public place that I could probably go to. And I kind of do know the rest of the story here, Chuck, but tell us about how did you come to take this photograph? What are some of the things that it does for you when you see it?
Well, I love this area where it is because it's where I live in San Jose. It's the neighborhood adjacent to my neighborhood. So it's maybe 6 blocks away, I guess. And this is like one of the grander boulevards in that neighborhood. I live in the more commoner side of the neighborhood. But this neighborhood was designed by John McLaren of Golden Gate Park fame back in, I think, maybe the 10s or the teens of the 1900s. Because my part of the neighborhood is from the 20s, and this part is a little bit older, not Victorian, but a little bit older. The very beginning of like the arts and crafts movement, I think. And so they planted all these palm trees, which are not native to Northern California, but they still look really cool. I was coming back from another assignment for a project a friend of mine and I were working on, and I saw that, and just with the colors and the street lights and the palms, just thought it was pretty cool. Had this above my mantle for a long time.
Yeah, I do. I love the colors. Kind of makes me think of, isn't there like a Eagles, like the Hotel California album cover has palm trees like this in it?
That sounds familiar. Yeah, I'm not positive, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, definitely evokes California to me.
Yeah, it's very California, but also, the gradation of the sky. Like this must have been a very precise moment when you took this to get this effect. So
yeah. I mean, I confess I didn't wait around for a while. I didn't like rush over there when I saw the sky. I just thought, wow, that looks pretty cool, and shot it there. This was a friend of mine and I were working on a calendar project for the Alameda Business Association. The Alameda being one of the main, it's part of El Camino Real as it goes through Santa Clara and San Jose. And so they wanted a bunch of pictures of the neighborhood. So my friend had grown up in the neighborhood and I lived in the neighborhood. So we were pretty qualified to do that. So we just photographed a beautiful house not far from this spot. It was kind of a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired house. And then walking back from that, like, hey, that looks cool. Let's do that. So that disappeared in the calendar too.
Yeah, so this was in a calendar. So people in San Jose would probably recognize it as San Jose, but the rest of us, it just kind of says, oh yeah, kind of old California.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, please throw your thoughts in the chat. If anyone wants to unmute and share some thoughts on this, that's very welcome. Gail says, I like how the palms on the left move outward and the palms on the right move inward. When you expect them to move outward to, quote, typically, unquote, quote, frame the light standard. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of like for her defying some expectations. What do you think of that?
That's a cool observation. I like that.
So we'll move on to our next image, and it's the one I have in the background, Moffett Field. And you have a story about this. Like this is you can't normally go into this hangar at Moffett Field. So tell us, like, how did you come to be in this place?
Yeah, this was like an open house that Moffett Field had, and I was there for a work thing. The engineering students at Santa Clara had come up with some sort of a mobile lab, and they were going to be there that day showing it off. And so I got there, and in order to, and this is hangar one. This was a blimp hangar, or anyway, sort of a dirigible hangar, maybe.
It's not a vodka hangar.
Yeah, way back in the way, it was the USS Macon, I think was the name of the airship that was in there. But it's so hard to explain how big it is. It's just incredibly huge. They had asbestos and other toxic things in the skin of this, so they de-skinned it. And I think it's still, I haven't been up there in a while, but I think it's still in this state. And Google or some other high-tech company has offered to like put a skin on it, but they didn't say when. So for now, it's just like this, but it's not open to the public. It's close to the public, but here you could just go in and wander around, and it was a beautiful spot. The light in there was just magical because it was kind of diffused from the network of all this stuff, of all the girders and all that stuff. And this is a panorama I did on my iPhone. So I'm just standing in one place and I'm moving it straight across like this. So the people in the foreground are a little distorted. And it's basically distorted anyway, but I just wanted to show the scope of it.
Well, it's kind of distorted in a wonderful way. It's distorted in a way that kind of works. Like you have these lines from the shadows that they seem like they're kind of converging or something. You know, like that gives you this sense of motion. And then it's so sharp, like the geometry of the hangar is so sharp. I think that really makes this a special photograph. And, you know, panorama is something that's in our pockets for most of us all the time. Like, I wonder how many people know that you can do something like this. Do you think, is this like a hard thing to do with an iPhone, or is it just like anyone could have whipped out their iPhone and done this?
Pretty much anybody. And, probably most other phones do it too. My gripe with Steve Jobs, rest his soul, is that he didn't think manuals were necessary with any of his equipment from Apple. So you get a device from Apple and you have no idea what it can do. You have no idea what it can do. And so there are all these features that you just discover after a while, and people tell you about them, or you hear about them online or in a chat group or something. But anyway, this is actually really easy to find in the photo thing. You can go photo and it says video or whatever, and one of the options is panorama. So you can just and you can go in either direction, and it's fun to do.
So maybe a good advice from all this would be play with the panorama. If you have, I don't know, do the Android phones also have that?
I imagine. I've never had one, so I can't say for sure, but I can only imagine they do. The other interesting thing you can do is you can do vertical panoramas. Just turn the phone sideways if you're a place where there's like a tall tower, or if you're in a building with like I photographed a building I was on a balcony inside the building, and then looked up at the dome of the building and then looked back down at the floor, and it made a really interesting effect. And you don't normally see those things. But and I from someone, an Android phone can do that too. That's great.
Yeah, And that's Manu Schnetzler, who's been a past guest on Art Viewing Adventures, another photographer,
Neat.
one of my favorites. And Ron Horry mentions that Hangar 1 is being restored. The east is covered with tarps and scaffolding while they're working on it.
Wow.
I just wonder if they ever have an event like this again. I kind of feel like I need to be there. So if anybody hears about something like this happening down there at Moffett Field, let's get the word out. Very, very
Yes, it's
special.
really cool. Somebody commented that they knew somebody in this picture. Is that right?
Yeah, Gail says I recognize the guy on the left in the center of the folks in the center foreground. So there you go, Chuck. You're
That's
kind
wild.
of unintentionally part of the surveillance apparatus.
Yes.
That's really funny.
That is funny.
Well, Gail's going to reach out to him, I think, and tell him he's in your photograph.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't mind.
So this is kind of harkens back to your career with Santa Clara University. But I just have to say I love the colors of this. I love the greens and the yellows and the blue, just really strong colors. And again, it seems like the perfect time of day. So what were you doing when you took this photograph? What was happening?
This was the sort of annual Christmas tree in front of the mission photo that I used to do. The mission church is kind of like the centerpiece of the campus at Santa Clara. It was the original mission was one of the original 13 California missions, but this is a reproduction built in the 20s. The other ones, I always think of the Monty Python Holy Grail scene where the king is showing his son what he's going to inherit. He goes, well, the first castle burned down and fell over and sank into the swamp, but this one is yours. This one stayed up and it's yours. So this one, the previous missions burned down, fell over and sank into the swamp, as it were, but this one has stayed there since the 20s. And the original one was from the 1700s, I think. And so this is, I would just go out there and set up a tripod and, wait till the light got really good and photograph the tree in front of the mission. And luckily, I just totally lucked out and, found a beautiful place to work for all those years. It's not hard to make a beautiful photograph here, especially if you're patient and wait for the right time of day.
Well, it's easy for you to say, Chuck. This is like a beautiful photograph. I don't think I've ever taken anything quite this stunning, but I appreciate the encouragement.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And yeah. Again, I think you've kind of picked like this magical time where the sun is setting. You get it's kind of a silhouette effect with the palm trees to some degree.
Yeah.
And then that blue sky. Wow. We'll move on to the next. So this one, I think we'll throw this out to the audience. Like, what do you think we're looking at? What is this? And we won't give it away. We'll just talk about it abstractly until we hear if folks have some ideas of what this might be. But for me, I love the of course, the checkerboard pattern. It kind of reminds me of the Joan Brown exhibition that just closed at SF MoMA, because she loved putting checkerboard patterns into her paintings.
Neat.
Very nice, clean, strong colors, kind of a bit of a sheen to it, I think. A little bit of, so it's not really clear what we're looking at. You've taken like a portion of something and maybe cropped it. And also there's an angle, like I think in photography, we often talk about like triangles and horizontal, diagonal being really, really attractive. We got some chat thoughts. Bill is saying, could it be a taxi cab? Gail says the picture images are flashing dark and light. Is that true? Is
yes, it is. And I've got no idea. This happened this time we did a Zoom, Rodney. And
I think I figured out why that happens.
Oh, okay.
So thanks for telling me that, Gail. I'm going to see if I can fix that real quick.
It's not super bad, but it is a little distracting.
It's not a great thing. Go to, it's like an advanced setting. Use hardware acceleration to, I don't know if this is going to work. That's too bad. I've been trying to fix that. And I apologize, folks, if that is what your experience is. Are we seeing it? Is it still doing it?
It hasn't yet.
Well, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
It is our goal to not, we understand we're showing this over the computer connection.
It just happened again.
Yeah.
Oh.
Darn. Thought I'd figured out why that was happening.
That's okay. Yeah, I was drawn to this just by the shapes and the angles and the colors and the chrome and yes, it is a car. It was during a car show in Carmel, and I don't really remember whether it was actually a taxi cab or if it was a custom car that someone dressed up that way. This is several years ago, but I was just kind of drawn to the shapes and the angles and all that.
Yeah, it's like, I love abstractions, and so you've kind of taken something, like so you can kind of like get the sense, yeah, this is the kind of colors we see in a car.
And let's see, Rodney, you've frozen on me.
Oh, have I frozen for everybody else too? Oh man.
Oh, there he goes. He's back.
The internet is not our friend today.
Yeah.
All right. So it reminds me of Judy Chicago. She created some artworks using like the metal, the kind of metal you'd have on a car with the kind of paint you'd have on a car. And she did it as like a feminist, trying to like appropriate this material that's more associated with men. But you've kind of, so you've got the same stuff, like this is car stuff with that taxi cab pattern. And you were telling me like you like to go to car shows and you will take photographs like this that are close-ups of features of cars. Why do you do that, Chuck?
Well, I mean, I like finding little things here and there, but the nuts and bolts reason why I started doing that is because there's so many people at these shows. If you want to get a picture of the entire car, there's people all around it. And so you have to wait for everybody to clear. And then somebody, of course, as soon as it clears, somebody walks into the frame. And I don't want to be one of those jerks who just goes, excuse me, get out of the frame. I'm trying to take this, but I won't do that. I mean, and plenty of people do, believe me. And I'm sometimes one of those people that gets in their way, especially if I'm really close getting a detail shot and they want to get a picture of the entire car. Sorry. But yeah, so it's just been kind of an exercise for me to go to these things. And there's a mutual friend of mine and Rodney's that I usually go to these car shows with. And he has other reasons for going to car shows than I do. I like going to finding little detailed pictures of cars. And then I end up sometimes photographing the people too, because sometimes these people dress up to go with their car. If they have like an old car, 20s or 30s, they'll dress up in their +4s and boots and everything. And I'll stop them and say, can I get a picture of you guys?
It makes you realize that cars are such an important part of cultural what we see in our fashion, and there's things that like scream American car, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's pick another one. So this one, I like, first of all, I want to ask people, do you have a sense of where this might be? Some guesses as to where, like, it's kind of, you get some clues about place that you might see. And I bet you we have some people in the audience who may very well know this place. Here we go. Ron has guessed Alviso.
Getting very warm there. Yes.
Very warm.
Just through Alviso to get here.
So what do you, Ron, what do you see that makes you think it might be Alviso? Feel free to unmute or throw it in the chat. Yeah, well, you see some water for sure. And then I love this sign. It's just like so incredibly weathered. And I think you said that you were just like out and about, and then so you see this and you take the picture, and then you do this other thing, which we'll see more of in your photographs, which is that it's not on the level. You
Right.
know, you've lined up the street sign with some kind of pole that's behind it, but that's another diagonal going on, and the horizon is not level. It kind of reminds me of when I was growing up. I remember watching Batman, and this is the old kind of funny Adam West Batman, and they would always show the Penguin and the other bad guys in their hideouts, and they would always be on an angle. It wouldn't be level there either.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you were affected by that, Chuck, or what is it with these angles?
I'm a Batman veteran too, yes. But I guess it goes back a long way, and I only found out about this recently, that this angle in pictures, and I think it started in cinematography, actually. It started in the early German cinematography called the Deutsch angle, or it's now they call it the Dutch angle, just kind of to mess with that. But was used to create tension in older movies. So if you see things like, from the era of Citizen Kane and movies like that, then that was very, very early on in that. And then the earlier Cabinet of Dr. Calgary, they would do a lot of angular stuff, and all of the cabinets, well, the cabinets in the Cabinet of Dr. Calgary were all these really strange angular cabinets that didn't have right angles to them. So I just do it not to create tension, but just to add a little oddity to it, to add a little not motion, but I don't know. Just to make it look a little bit less like a boring straight picture. I used to be really OCD about getting the horizon absolutely level and all the buildings absolutely straight in every picture I did. I had a T-square on my enlarging easel in the darkroom, and I'd make sure everything was vertical and everything was horizontal. And I kind of broken free of that. I mean, I still do it sometimes when I have to, if I do an architectural photography and all that stuff. I mean, you really need to do that, and cameras now have a built-in level in them. So but just to throw something in there, just to throw something a little bit odd, that's why I do it, and I'm certainly not the only one who does it.
Yeah, by the way, Ron revised his guess and said the power towers make him think it could be the Sunnyvale Baylands.
I think he's right, because this is right near the Moffett Field picture from earlier. That's probably a stone's throw from here. So this is like the Baylands, just between Moffett Field and the bay. And the Not a Through Street, I think, was when that was not open to the public. And that was, I think it's a relatively recent thing, certainly in the last 20 years, maybe, that area has been open to the public there. So that's what that sign was from. And then shortly after I shot this picture, the sign disappeared. Someone took it home or whatever.
So it's in someone's basement or something.
Right, yeah.
Very cool. Let's move on. So Cottage Grill, like the oldest restaurant in California. I've been there many times, and it's a favorite place. It's been a favorite place in our family. I think you said it was in your family too.
Oh, going way back, yeah. I mean, I'm a native San Franciscan, so people would come in from out of town, and we'd always take them to Tattage's. And my uncle, who was a lifelong bachelor, ate there probably at least 3 times a week. I'm thinking all the waiters knew him whenever I would go there with him. So I still go there whenever I'm in the city. I don't get up to the city that often. So that's one of my definite go-to places. When I'm up there, I usually just go by myself and sit at the counter. Can always get a counter seat almost.
Yeah, it's been my dad always loved the Tattage Grill. Mm-hmm. And Sarah and I, when we got married up in Napa, and we used our tandem as the getaway vehicle. And then we biked from Napa back. We were going to bike all the way back to where we live in Kensington, but we had to go through the city to get to BART. So we went over the Golden Gate Bridge, and we're getting to BART, and we go by the Tattage Grill, and there are my parents, like in line about to go into the Tattage right after the day after our wedding. So,
oh, that's hilarious! That's wonderful.
Yeah, but this is like a different view of it. Like it's not the big picture window that you will see on It must be like the other side of it or something. But I just love how, or is it like, are you looking up and that's why we don't see
Oh
that
yeah,
window?
yeah. I'm looking up. The picture window I think is down and to the right of this, if I remember right, or maybe just directly down from this. Um, but I this was like early in my iPhone photography with an earlier version of the iPhone that I couldn't adjust the exposure on, so the neon is actually lit. So if I had to do this again, I would darken the picture down a little bit so the neon would actually stand out a little bit more and not just look burned out white. But that's another kind of, I don't know, angular picture that
I kind of like it like this. So it'd be fun. It'd be fun to see the two different treatments and to decide which you like better.
mhm.
And then you've got this border around it, which we'll see in a lot of these photographs. What's going on? It looks like almost like a Polaroid or something.
It's yeah, it's a program. It's you guys have probably heard of like things like Hipstamatic and other um, programs that you can use for your Instagram photos or whatever. This is a little bit different. It's called a Shake It Photo, SHAKEIT, and it's made to look like the old SX70 Polaroids, the ones that would spit out the front of the camera when you took a picture, and they go and shoot the camera out, and then you would you didn't have to, but just to feel useful. Well, before the picture appeared, you would like shake the thing back and forth, and so these software people have come up with this thing called Shake It Photo, so that you shoot a picture with that program, and then on the screen of the phone, you can see the picture going through and it appears, and then the picture, and then it's white, but the picture gradually, appears, and you can actually shake the phone back and forth. And within the phone, you can actually see the picture shaking back and forth. It's a gimmick, but
It's a gimmick, but I love how they've reverse engineered this obsolete technology. And just like I guess it's nostalgia, but it's also like you get a different photograph than you would, right? Like I think there's some things going along the edge. Is it just me, or do I think there's like some kind of additional little black border or even some kind of sense of dimensionality?
yeah,
That
I'm not
it
sure
does?
which that is, but it definitely gives the impression that because on the SX70 tactily the image is on a really shiny thing that's a little bit raised from the border, and so I'm just amazed at how much work they put into it to get these effects. And the colors are a little bit weird. They're not colors that appear in nature, and I kind of like the little otherworldly thing of that program. So I used to use that program almost all the time with everything I did on my phone, and now I don't use it all the time. But I don't use any other filters or anything like that on my phone. Sometimes I'll go through and I'll put the picture, usually just in the native app on the iPhone, and I'll darken it down or crop it or whatever, or straighten it or make it crooked, depending on what I want to do, or make it black and white if it was originally color, and tweak it somehow.
It seems like you also really like the square format. Am I right about that? I see a lot of these photographs as being perfect squares, or is just because you're using that software?
It's that software, and it is weird because I professionally never used a square format before. I always shot 35 millimeter, which is a 24 by 36 millimeters, and I would occasionally borrow or rent a square format camera, like a medium format camera that took 2.25 or 120 film, and that took a little bit wrap my head around the square format there. But with this thing that gives me this effect, you have to shoot square. So that's kind of like made me start thinking in a square format sometimes. So I mean, it's good for your brain to change it up once in a while, I guess, and not get stuck in a rut, or to get stuck in a new rut is the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, yeah. In a square reminds me of a painter I think of as Agnes Martin, who pretty much did nothing but square and minimalist paintings.
Mhm.
Kind of cool. Gail has a thought on the Taddage Grill. She remembers the crusty waiters. Remember in the old days, it was for men only. I didn't know that. I know that waiters have almost all been men.
Yeah.
Wow, memories. Yeah, it's such a classic place.
Yeah, that is interesting. It does definitely has a men's club kind of look, and not and being a man, that didn't really I wasn't really affected by it, but yeah, definitely like, hey, fella, how you doing? Have a seat at the bar.
Have a martini right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Another one of these shake it photos. What's going on? Let's ask this to the audience. What's going on here? Any thoughts? Like, do we know where this is? We see obviously like some really big letters and some other interesting features. So it's almost an abstraction. Also, again, we get another checkerboard pattern. See, I guess there, Bill says, is that the Cabrillo Theater? Yeah, because you see the letters.
B-A-B-E-R, yeah.
It could be. It could be. I'll tell you it isn't, but it could be.
Yeah.
And like I don't know how many people look at this and think, I bet you I've been to this place, and I'm just like, it's just like not enough information for me to figure it out. But that's part of like one of the fun things you do with your photography, Chuck, is you give us some information, but not really enough for us to definitively know what we're looking at.
It's Britex Fabrics across from Neiman Marcus.
Bingo.
There you go. Peter
Awesome.
and Kevin nail it. It's
Exactly.
Britex Fabrics, and you get like the letters A, B, something, right? I guess that's an R down there.
Yeah. Or the fabrics thing.
I love, for some reason, I love this little feature here on the right. And I had trouble figuring out what it was. I loved how it had as a barcode. It's parallel with the sign, which is really cool.
It's Metro shelving.
Metro shelving.
Yeah, it's this wire. They have these thick wire mesh things. I actually have some of that in my garage. I got when a store was actually closing, and they were selling all of like everything in the store, all the products, plus they were also selling all their shelving and everything. So I went and grabbed some of that stuff. It's really, really good quality shelving that I couldn't afford otherwise. But that's just kind of there incidentally. But it is there as kind of a parallel thing to go along with the windowsill and the sign and all of that other stuff.
Would it be as good of a photograph without it? Would it be better? I don't think it would.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of balanced. What do other people think?
Yeah, I'd love to hear what other folks think. Also, you just have like these wonderful lines in here. You've got, I love how this line kind of comes across the top. So it's sort of a frame. I love, you got the checkerboard, but it's on this kind of angle. And we have a comment in chat from Gail. Oh my God, Britex Fabrics was the be all and end all mecca of all things fabric and notions. I can totally remember the old original store that was narrow and like 6+ stories tall. Love the photo. Is it not there anymore, Britex?
The sign is still there, I think, but I think the store closed.
No.
Definitely. I actually went to the store once because I was building a dark room in the laundry room of an apartment that I rented on California Street. And I couldn't put up any permanent walls or anything. So I just looked for some thick black cloth. And I thought, well, where am I going to find that? And I thought, well, Britex Fabrics, of course. So I went there and I bought yard after yard of this thick black cloth and then nailed little panels up on the ceiling of the laundry room and draped the cloth back down. And so I had a little temporary dark room behind my place on California Street. I still have the cloth.
You still have the cloth?
Yeah, I use it for blackouts for like, if I'm doing a studio type picture and I want to black out a window or I want to just have a black background for something, I'll bring it out. Actually used it once at an outdoor Shakespeare festival as a blanket because it was getting really cold in the evening. So I got my black cloth out from my dark room in 1979, I think, and used it as a blanket.
Wow. And do you still have a dark room, Chuck? No,
I don't. I still have everything you need for a dark room. I have all the gear, all the equipment. I don't have a space for one. Plus, as much as people of my age have nostalgia for dark rooms, and as much as younger people have kind of like a a retro urge to like get back to get in the dark room and do this old stuff. I spent so much time in the dark room that I was just sick of it. I mean, if I could have somebody else mix the chemicals for me and clean the trays and everything like that, maybe I would do it. But knowing that I would have to do that, like the setup and takedown is like a half an hour on each direction, in each direction, and then you go and make a print, which takes about a half an hour, and then you have to clean everything up again. So I'm
You
not
don't
gonna
miss
go
that.
to the dark room again.
I kind of miss, and maybe I shouldn't, but I miss the smell of the chemicals like that. This would evoke such memories.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was such, it was like, I don't think anything else really smelled like that.
I don't think so. I'm gonna. I'm still friends with some of the people on the faculty at Santa Clara, and I'm going to go over there Wednesday. I'm going to donate some gear over there, and I asked for a tour of the new facilities because they built a new art building maybe 10 years ago, and they put in a darkroom, like a brand new darkroom facility in this art building, even though it's an archaic, form, but it's an art form that people are still exploring. So they outfitted the darkroom really nicely. I've only seen it once, but I'm anxious to go back and see it again.
I think young folks really like my nephew he's into photography, and he likes film. He likes like the old school stuff.
Yeah, no, it is cool and it is magical. The first several years you do it, it's kind of magical, and after that, it just kind of gets tedious. You wait for the thing to develop, and you look at it and go, "No, that's still not right." And you throw it away and go back and start over again.
Yeah, it's it's just amazing what we do have with photography today. All the power that we have without having to use the chemicals and all that.
It's less of a dark art now, and photography is easier than it's ever been. So making it more accessible for a larger part of the population, but maybe a little less special, really. So I probably made money doing photographs that people could just do on their iPhone. So I wouldn't have been able to make a living at all the first 5 or 10 years I was in the business.
Well, they could, but do they? That's always the question, right? Let's move on to another photograph. And this is another one of your iPhone photos.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of love the silhouette of the chimney. Kind of makes this work for me. The colors of the sky, what's going on with the clouds. You've got these lines, these parallel lines on the side of the building. And I also kind of like the way the detail on the sides of the building kind of fades out. I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Would love to know what other folks think of this, but what was going on? Where were you? How did this photograph come to be, Chuck?
This is on Angel Island. I was out there. We took a ferry over from Tiburon for the day and just did a walk around the island. I've been there a few different times, of course, but being a Bay Area denizen, but this is just one of the old buildings there. And thankfully, back in the olden days, this would have been really hard to expose for, because the building is in deep shadow and the sky is blue and the clouds are illuminated directly by the sun. So it's really, really hard to get detail in the darks and in the lights in a picture. And it was very difficult in the days of film, but this is just kind of built into the algorithm of the iPhone and the Shake It Photo app, that you're able to do that without even trying too hard. It's not even, I don't think it's an HDR thing. What does HDR stand for? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a process of getting detail in really light areas and really dark areas in a photograph. So This was kind of a lucky shot.
High dynamic range. Ron says we do have a lot of photographers on the call.
Mm-hmm.
Of note, I should also say Ron and Manu are both great photographers. Is this like an earlier iPhone? Like it doesn't seem like it's that high resolution.
Yeah, I think it is probably one of the older ones. It's not bad. I mean, I think that I actually have one of my old iPhones, and I was looking at it to see what number it was, because I have an 8 now, which of course is like way outdated. But but it's drastically better than the first ones that I had on the phones. But yeah, this was probably kind of about halfway between the really bad ones and the decent ones.
But I kind of feel like you get some really nice photographs on these older iPhones, in
Mhm.
that like the lower res kind of works for you. It doesn't, things don't have to be sharp to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I went to an event a while ago, a few years ago in San Jose. There's a big event called Ann and Mark's Art Party, and it's this couple who, I think they started it out of their house. And then the last time I went, which was pre-COVID, it was down at the fairgrounds in San Jose, and it was all these different galleries of all this different stuff. There was a lot of stuff from Burning Man, so they had these big metal sculptures that spouted fire and everything. But there was one little gallery of cell phone picture things. And I'm walking through looking at that, feeling very superior because, well, I'm a real photographer, right? But I'm walking around, and the curator of that exhibit was talking to some people, and the people he was talking to were going, gosh, I bet with all these kids now, with all their phones, you're probably seeing such fabulous pictures, that you would never have seen from anybody in the past. And almost as if he was reading my mind, the curator said, well, a lot of the best iPhone photography comes from people who have had experience with straight photography in the past, and they're applying that experience to the new medium. And I just like glowed hearing that. It was like, yes, that's yay for the old people, or at least for the people who are the more traditional photographers adopting a new medium.
Yeah, because the experience is so important. Like I think of my experience doing tours. I have done a lot of tours in the last 8 years, and it really does, like, it gives you a comfort level and some instincts, right? And so you have those instincts, which I, as a photographer, do not have. And I'm still like struggling to make decent images. Although I feel like, you have to give yourself credit. I do make strides.
Yeah.
But we're not doing a show about my photography. No time soon. Maybe one day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can be a consultant there.
I would love to get some of my photography friends together and go through some of my photographs and talk about, like, oh, what could you do to turn this from a mediocre into a decent photograph? I don't know if that would be a good show or not, but it's kind of a fun idea.
It'd be fun. Yeah.
All right, let's find so let's ask people again in the audience, what do you think's going on here? What are we looking at? What do you like about this image? Where does this take you? And for me, I'll just jump in and start saying that again, I love colors. I love really interesting, strong colors, and I love the way the blue works with the red, works with these the orange lights. I love the metal pattern down here. Ron is telling us that's Japanese. So it's some sort of Japanese, I guess, license plate. What kind of a contraption is this? That would be, we don't really know that. Again, Chuck, you've kind of abstracted this image. Again, maybe you were at a car show and you couldn't get that close. You couldn't get like the full shot or something. So you do this.
I just like I like the Japanese characters. I thought those looked really cool. And it's some sort of a motor scooter. I can't remember exactly what it is. Might be, something like a Honda 50 or something, but it was a motorcycle show up in San Mateo. I actually rode my Vespa up to San Mateo from San Jose to go to this motorcycle show, and I'm parking the Vespa out in the parking lot next to all these Harleys and everything. It was really fun. But yeah, that was, and so I wasn't doing what I'd call serious photography there. I just wanted to roam around and see what was new and different. So I think I took my phone. I think I actually did take a camera, just a little more of a point and shoot digital camera with me, but this is definitely an iPhone shot.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some evidence that it's an older iPhone. You can see a little bit graininess in here, especially down here in the metal work. And I have to say, I think that's cool. I like it.
Good. It's like, if you can't control something, you might as well like it.
Yeah. Enjoy what we have. So we're gonna pair two things up. So we've got this little pair, it's gonna be a pair of pairs, and then we have a different kind of pair. But what do we think's going on here? What do we like about this? Folks, feel free to share thoughts and chat about this image. I think it's not that hard to figure out like what this must be and where it is.
I wouldn't think so.
Definitely a winter scene somewhere, and these are ski poles, and we've got the loops that are kind of like, I don't know, but they almost seem like they are stand-ins for like a pair of people or something, I love how one is a little bit bigger than the other. Other pole talking to his son. Yeah. It's kind of just like neat how it does make you, it takes you to places. You think there's a story, even though there's just a couple of ski poles in the snow, you still want to come up with some sort of narrative. I think that's what makes it a nice photograph. Also like the blue in the background. I like the pattern on the snow. And then we were going to compare it to this because it's just another one of your paired up pictures. And of course, this is fun because it's like obviously some oversized scissors. It must be a sculpture of scissors or something. I'm a
Just
sucker
regular
for things like
scissors.
that.
I'm just really close.
Could they be real scissors? That'd
Yeah.
be kind of cool. Are they real scissors?
Sitting in a jar on my desk, and I just got really, I got like this close to them.
So you fooled me. I thought, oh, it's like Klaus Oldenburg or something, gigantic scissors, helping us think about like, how life is just full of like things getting cut up,
Great things, yeah. Yeah, and this was just like I was in my office at Santa Clara looking out the window on a rainy day, and I saw these scissors there, and I shot that. And then when I did a little blurb book, and which I'd never done before or since, but it was interesting because then I would lay a picture down and go, well, what do I have next to this? And then it was a whole different way of thinking about, what would go with this other picture. I didn't want to just go through and just blast things in order of order, and not alphabetical order, but in chronological order. And so I saw the loops here, and I thought, well, the loops in the ski picture is kind of similar. So I thought they'd be a good match for each other.
Yeah. Fun. And man, you fooled me. Very, very cool. I love playing with scale.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me think of Rene Magritte, who liked to do that. Yeah. So, okay, here's another one of your this is a lower res photograph of a place probably many of us have been to. Many people know this, Bryce National Park. But just like, what did you could, like, if this was a much sharper image, I don't think it would be as interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree, Chuck? You think I'm on the right track or what?
Yeah, I put this up on Facebook because that's my gallery now. I don't really I used to shoot for a lot of publications, and now I don't. And I shoot for the web occasionally, but Facebook is like kind of an outlet for me. And so, I thought it was good enough to put up there. It's kind of painterly. It's a little bit more abstract. Certainly not sharp. I had a real camera with me at this point, and I probably did some pictures of the canyon like this. It was sunrise. I'm not a morning person, so it was really unusual for me to actually get out there to do this. But yeah, and the sun, it wasn't a super dramatic sunrise. It was kind of cloudy and misty, and so that you can see that in the picture. But I think I did an okay job composing it, but and what an incredibly gorgeous place. A couple of days later, I did a hike through the canyon, and it was just the light there was, if you could ever go down there and hike through the canyon, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. Are the colors distorted by the Shake It application?
Probably a little bit, but No, they were, I think it was just because it was kind of, a little bit misty and kind of overcast, that things are a lot more pale than you would think of when you normally think of Bryce Canyon pictures.
Yeah,
Direct sunlight coming down, creating contrast.
I really like this, a place that we've seen photographed many times, but really done in an interesting way. Move on to this one, another one of your car pictures. And I like, so take a little time with this and see if you see something kind of, I don't know, something, could this be called a self-portrait?
A partial self-portrait, yeah. There's a shoulder and a hand and a camera, or it must be a phone in there. I can't recognize it, but yeah, that's definitely me.
And it's kind of just like the background is distorted. So we really do not get a sense of like what this, it seems like some kind of building behind you.
Yeah, it's definitely building. I can't for the life of me think where that, this is probably also in Carmel during one of their car shows, but maybe Pacific Grove, because they do some shows too. But and actually, yeah, it probably is Pacific Grove now that I think of that, the look of that building. But yeah, I'm mostly, of course, concentrating just on the car itself and on the curves and the straight lines and the chrome and the different colors.
At first glance, this is a very simple picture of just like the handle of a car. But then you spend some more time with it and you realize, oh, there's a lot of depth here. There's you taking the photograph. There's the building. There's this other view. Is this the same building that would be up in that window? Or is that a different building on the other side of the car?
I think it's on the other side of the car.
Yeah, and I like
I'm not positive.
Yeah, I like it's cool. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
So that's fun. Another one of your, obviously this is part of a car, but I can't really, I'm not sure I know what part of a car it is, and it looks, I love the modernist details of this, the two lines, but they're like, they've got curves in them, I guess, or something. They're softened. So that's really fun. Would love to hear other people's thoughts on this photograph. Very simple colors, kind of chromatic, monochromatic, I mean. Art Deco-ish, Gail says. Yeah, I think so. It's like, it's got this ornateness that it doesn't need to have, but it does, right? They've obviously
definitely ornamentation that wasn't necessary. Yeah.
And thank goodness for that. I'm a big fan of ornamentation that's not necessary. We need more of that in our world. Okay, another car handle. This one, I think that little flash off of it is really kind of a nice touch. Something, it makes the whole thing kind of pop. Good. In my mind. Also really great colors, the silver, the gold, the black, orange. Fun photograph. And then this, I feel like there should be some kind of story behind this. We've got these different objects and, I see a bicyclist, I see something going on with, tobacco. I see what looks like film canisters, a rabbit. Chuck, like what is this? What's going on here?
This is a cabinet that my wife found at an antique store, a garage sale or something somewhere. And this is just some old assorted stuff from around the house. The film cans were like from my father's era, Kodachrome film cans. And then the two tiles are, I think they're modern tile. Well, there's the tile there, and then the little vase are kind of, arts and crafts style tile, but I think they're modern reproductions of that. There's two tobacco containers, the velvet tobacco, and then down here the bugler. You can see the bugler there, and then there's a cigar tube. I can't remember what that white thing is. Down
it's
by
like a little flower or something.
Yes, but yeah, the cyclist came from a flea market in Paris. A friend of mine brought it back for me, thinking of me because I used to do a lot of cycling.
So a lot of this is about you and your wife, Michelle.
Yeah. Yeah. It just kind of an assorted stuff. And then way up in the upper left-hand corner is another little clown thing way up at the top. I think
Oh,
it's
I see. Hold on, let me point that out. Up
yeah.
here.
Yeah, I can't remember where that came from, but I think it's probably another one from our friend's trip to Paris.
I think it's kind of good that you show these things, but you don't show them in their entirety. It's like we see glimpses of them, we see them in shadow, and that somehow makes them more interesting, more intriguing. We had a couple of comments on some previous. Maybe it was Ron who said that this might be an Aston Martin. Is it this one or is it the other one? Maybe it's the previous one. That one. That's an Aston Martin.
It probably is. I was really trying to remember what that was, and I wasn't coming to me. But it definitely has an Aston Martin look about it. So I would say probably.
And then I think in Gail's comment, amazing colors, murky, looks like a watercolor. Maybe it's Gail. Is it this one that you were referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. It's really intriguing. Let's see. We probably really only have time for one more photograph. I think I'll pick that one. I like this one. What's going on? Let's ask again for the audience. What do you think's going on here? Where would this be? What are we, how did this object come to be? What was maybe Chuck doing when he photographed it? I love the again, it's on an angle. It's not straight on. It's not lined up perfectly. And interesting colors, the yellow, the rust, the blue. I guess it's really like the weatheredness of this.
You get the impression I like old stuff, and I really do. Much more interesting than new stuff.
So where did you find this, Chuck?
It was, well, according to Ron, an old rusty farm sign. Yes, that was in outside of St. Helena. I was biking, and I biked up past the Silverado Trail up the hill there, and then dropped down on the other side. And this was on a barn just off the side of the road, and it looked abandoned. I don't know whether it was or not, but I remember like riding across the little dirt field or something like that to get close enough to it to get that shot. But I like that you see the shape of the state of California in there, and being a native Californian, that means a lot to me. And the rust and just the age and textures and stuff. I love textures.
Yeah, and it's kind of all these photographs that you've taken is a real testament to the power that we carry with us in our pockets. We didn't build this as like a discussion of iPhone photography, but even though you're a professional photographer, you have done a lot of iPhone photography, because you were telling me like the best camera is the camera that you have in your hand, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it inspires me to keep at it, keep trying. Hopefully I will get better results as I get more experience and have a little more courage to just like try to do cool things.
Oh gosh, and the thing about that is, when I was learning photography, it took more than courage to learn to try to new thing. It took money, because if you have color film in your camera, you had to pay a decent amount of money for that roll of film, and then you're going to pay a decent amount of money to have it processed. And then if you want to print it, oh my God, it's ridiculous. And now, we have this medium that we can show each other pictures without having to print them. We still can print them, of course. I should print more, but I don't. But having this medium to be able to show pictures to people without having to go through the whole printing process and the time process. And, I would shoot a picture back in the film days, and I would have to wait until I processed the film and made a print before I could tell it was a decent picture, or more likely a lousy picture. So now it's so, you get so much feedback instantly from that. So it's much easier to learn now, I think, than it ever was.
It's much easier to learn, but we have to really want to learn and to kind of be humbled a little bit by like, a photo, the image that you see with your eye that you think is cool, when you turn that into a photograph, it may or may not be successful,
Right. Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
that's probably the first step, to just think, wow, that's really pretty. And then some of the stuff I think is really pretty, I just turn around and walk away. And other people go, you got to get a picture of it. It's like, I can tell you right now, it's not going to make a great picture. But I mean, that took years and years and years, and sometimes I'm still wrong.
Yeah, it's humbling. Well, Chuck, I think the real testament to your work is that it's fun to talk to you about your photographs. And I'm really glad you could make time to do this. Thank you so much. Would love to have you back again sometime and talk more. So we'll wrap this up. Thanks everyone for tuning in. There are more great programs coming up from the Community Living Campaign. I think we have something at 2:30. If anybody from CLC wants to jump in. So we have more programs, 2:30, right, Jennifer? Is that okay? So we've got like art and cooking, and then we do have Richie Unterberger this evening. He'll be talking about Peter Green of the original Fleetwood Mac.
Wow.
Yeah, which is so interesting. That band was like a completely different band, but very, very interesting back in like, I guess, late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I might tune into that. Well, I'm very flattered that you had me, and I'm very flattered of the very kind things people have said. I'm humbled every day by other photographers whose work I see, and by other artists whose work I see, and it's humbling and stimulating at the same time. So thank you very much for having me.
Great. We'll see everybody soon. And get out there with your iPhones and take lots of great pictures like Chuck has. Okay. All right, folks.
Bye.
Until next time, 2 weeks. Adios.
Thanks, Rodney.